Your vessel awaits, Commander. Course set for the Ring of Fire Islands. Taimi's scientist and his equipment arrived before you. You're cleared to board.
Well, so if you missed it earlier in the week, we did talk a little bit about the start of Flashpoint, which has been a completely mental patch in terms of opening the lore, and hopefully that's clear to you guys now, because spoilers, at the end of the first instance, it's revealed that Lazarus the Dire is indeed Balthazar, one of the human gods. The plausibility of that and quite a number of other little things we still have to get to. But today I want to talk to you guys a little more about what comes after, kind of the middle sections of the story and where the plot ends up taking us to. So a quick recap, not only was Lazarus Balthazar, but he has stolen Taimi's machine, her modification of Omad's machine, which is said to be able to destroy Elder Dragons, and Balthazar plans on using that to take some Elder Dragons out. And we guess correctly, as it so happens, that since he's the god of fire and since Primordus is in the Fire Island chain, perhaps Balthazar has gone there. So we, on a whim, head on out. And that's really where I want to start the recap for you guys today. There's a lot of juicy stuff, and it involves us traveling to the new area of the world, Draconis Mons. So this area of the story immediately super impressed me and really highlighted a place where it seems the devs are listening to community feedback. You guys will remember that earlier on in Living World Season 3, they dumped the Bloodstone Fen map and then the first Fire Island chain map into the game world without having any real portals or connections to and from them. I, at the time, and many others criticized this, and we talked about how it kind of sucked that the gravity of traveling to the Fire Island chain had been kind of taken from us since we just walked through a random Asura gate. Well, here in this episode, the devs had just as much opportunity to do the exact same thing again. We were in Ratanovus, right? Last time we were in Ratanovus and we decided to go to the Fire Island chain, we just had to walk through an Asura gate, so they could have easily done the same thing here. Taimi says, oh, I've reconfigured the gate again, go walk through and you'll be on Draconis Mons. But the devs didn't do that this time. They didn't take the easy way out. They instead allowed us to travel in a more realistic and awesome way, complete with cutscenes. So this part of the story actually takes us back to Ratasum. We head down to the docks on Ratasum, which, as far as I understand, up until this point in Guild Wars 2, never in the personal story and never in any update through Living World or even small festival-based update has there really been much reason to ever come here, except maybe building snowmen or hacking pumpkins during those events. We actually travel here in the story, go to the docks, and climb aboard a submarine which takes us to the new map, complete with cutscenes both as you leave Ratasum and as you arrive in the new area. This is so cool. I'm so happy that they did this, and more of this, the better. The only trick they slightly missed here maybe is that you can only use that submarine the once during the story step instead of always after you finish the story step, a bit like the Bitterfrost Frontier portal, but it's badass, and it was the perfect thing to set me on edge as we move into Draconis Mons.
We appear to be inside a cavern created by gases during a volcanic eruption. Remarkable. It has a fascinating biome.
Yes, exactly. We dove down to the entrance and have surfaced inside.
So the cool thing about Draconis Mons is probably, in terms of the gameplay, yes, as I've already explained, one of the most unique areas you get to go to in the franchise. But in terms of the story, the setting as well, it's incredibly unique as well. We're on the inside of a submerged volcano that has only recently risen to the surface. So there's a lot of really fun things to know about this place. The reason we travel via submarine is we actually have to go under the water to move onto the inside of this cavern. So Draconis Mons, for what it's worth, was never really a name we were familiar with from Guild Wars 1. This entire area didn't exist in Guild Wars 1. It was all underwater at that time, except perhaps one small place. And so I want to draw you guys back to something we talked about way back when Rising Flames came out, and it was revealed we were going to be going to the Fire Island chain. You guys will remember I showed you a lot of the Guild Wars 1 areas of the Fire Island chain. I was very excited to see some of these maybe pop back. That never really happened too much because the area geographically has changed so much. But if you check out Shaman's Historical Guide to Tyria, an amazing resource, you guys who follow the channels will know that I look at this a great many times. If you look at this, you'll actually notice the Draconis Mons, which is a very verdant and green area of the Fire Island chain, for reasons I'll explain in a second, is actually kind of close to this point of interest from GW1, Leah's Island. So what was Leah's Island? It was something I mentioned, again, back when the Rising Flames patch came out. This was a bonus objective in one of the missions back in GW1, where you would take a ghost, a spirit, to rest at one of the very rare green areas 250 years ago. And so there's a very interesting theory in that because we know that Draconis Mons is a newly formed island that's just pushed up from beneath the surface, perhaps it's Leah's Island. And I really like this theory. So the idea is that Leah's Island and GW1 ended up, you know, rising up. And so why was Leah's Island green? Why is Draconis Mons green? Why is the inside of this volcano capable of sustaining life and have, you know, spiders in it and jungle foliage? Well, the answer to that is because of the Druids. So I kind of regret that the patch didn't do more with the Druids here, but the Druids do take a step forward. This is very fitting, really, because obviously the Living World Season 3 stuff is kind of Heart of Thorns related. Heart of Thorns, one of the big things about Heart of Thorns was that the Druids kind of came back, and we got that really awesome dynamic event chain, a part of the meta in Auric Basin. The Druids have been this long-standing part of the lore. We obviously, as GW2 players, know them as one of the elite specializations more than anything else now. But they're long-standing parts of the lore. People, I believe it was from Kryta, humans who had moved to the jungle and had eventually shed their mortal forms. We don't really know the full story of them. And so this patch actually explains a bit more that they had come to the Fire Island chain to build a secret grotto where they would preserve life and where they would, you know, act as protectors and shepherds of nature. And that it's a holy, sacred place to them. That is what Draconis Mons is. And it used to be under the water. It used to be like a secret inside of a volcano, underwater place of, you know, green, lush plants. How incredible is that? It's like some journey to the center of the earth style stuff. Really beautiful, fascinating location. And only recently, since Primordus came to the area, has it been forced up. I mean, that's brilliant, right? And now we move in our submarine on in. Excellent stuff, but of course when we first arrive we don't quite understand that the Druids are there. So there's some other cool stuff going on with Draconis Mons as well. There's kind of this large crystalline structure in the middle. It's not super well explained, but the story does end up taking us into that crystalline structure. Don't forget that Guild Wars 2 has very much pushed this idea that crystals are very condensed magic. It's a bit reminiscent as well, this middle pillar in the center of the volcano, to that kind of pillar we saw near where we defeated Morgemorth. And is that a coincidence that we have the two Elder Dragons there? I guess that's up to you guys to decide. Maybe we can do some deeper speculation on that later. Some other really fascinating stuff about this map, maybe more of a mechanical thing, but there is lots of water there, but it's boiling water, so you're actually losing health. You're taking a lot of damage while you're in it, so you're really not incentivized to swim around, which is a very fun way of playing with water in Guild Wars 2 of today, where they're pushing away from, you know, lots of underwater combat. Another really awesome thing around the water too is the existence of a Lagos. So there's really not too much to say here, but I was surprised to find when I was talking about this on a recent stream, some of you guys who are watching my videos don't even really recognize who the Lagos are at this point, which is crazy, but that just shows how long it's been since they've been a part of the story. The Lagos are a very mysterious deep sea race that was introduced to the franchise in 2012, had a bit of a place in very rare dynamic events sporadically dotted around core Tyria, and one particular Lagos had a lot to do with Traherne and the Pact's efforts against Zaitan. But since that, through Living World Season 1, through Heart of Thorns Season 2, and Season 3, we really haven't seen many Lagos. So if you're kind of a new player, you might have forgotten about these guys. You might have, you know, ceased to think about how they might play a role in the upcoming Elder Dragon fights? Well, on this map, as a bit of an Easter egg, near the boiling seas, we actually do find a dead Lagos. So the Lagos are great hunters. What was the Lagos doing here? Was the Lagos trying to hunt down Prime Mortis because Prime Mortis was in the area? Crazy stuff. They're very solitary characters also, and I wonder what the devs are hinting at here. You guys will remember that, like, when the raid came out, they had some hints of mountainous areas, and then we had Bitterfrost Frontier come in. It could really mean something here, guys. Don't forget, we've got an expansion coming up sooner rather than later as well. Does this suggest maybe the Lagos might come back into the story at that point? The devs obviously want us thinking about them. I just wonder why. And hey, if the Lagos wasn't hunting Primordus, was it perhaps hunting Balthazar? That's also a really cool idea. So that's Draconis Mons. Lots of Pact are there that we came in. Really nice side to the Pact as well. You're already seeing there's some fragmenting going on. Some of them are wondering if maybe they should be siding with Balthazar. Some of them are wondering whether they should maybe not. But we wash up on the shore, and from here, the story really kicks off. So it's revealed to us that one of the Asura here, one of the members of the Pact, actually has a tracker for Taimi's altered Omad's machine. And so with this tracker, we can figure out where it is. This tracker is kind of a weird thing in this part of the story, because presumably we could use the tracker, just go get the machine, and then voila, we know. They do confirm that Balthazar is here with the machine, which is nice. But before we get to really use this tracker in any meaningful way, the Asura is kidnapped, is grabbed by a mysterious force and disappears off deeper into this magical, awesome environment that's sprawled out before us. And so some of the other packs say, oh, well, you gotta go find it, basically. The dialogue's a bit weird here. It's kind of suggestive that maybe there was supposed to be a fight or something, like this dude saying weapons out.
Heads up! Weapons out! This is bad. Commander, I don't know what to say.
Like, was this something we were supposed to see but didn't in the end? There's a couple of times where the dialogue does that in this patch, and it just makes me raise my eyebrow that maybe there were little snipped out things that were cut away, where maybe we'd have dynamic events in the open world interacting with the story somehow. But regardless, it's our job to go find this tracker, so we move on. And as soon as we start moving on, a mysterious voice, an ancient voice on the wind, begins to speak to us. And it says stuff like this.
What? Did you hear that?
Or stuff like this. And so we wonder, what is this voice? Now, my first thoughts was actually, when I was first playing this patch, that this could be Balthazar speaking to us. Because at this point, we really don't know whether Balthazar's a good guy, whether he's, on our side, or whether he's more of an antagonist, what his role is in the story. And I liked the idea that a god could communicate with us in this way. Turns out it's not Balthazar, that this is actually the Druids. And not only is it the Druids that are communicating to us as we travel around, but the Druids were the ones that actually kidnapped the Asura in the first place.
Your friend is here. You are near.
Commander, over here! Thank the alchemy.
Are you okay?
I'm shaken to the bone. I barely managed to get away with my life. That vine dragged me through dirt and rock.
So, moving deeper in, we ultimately do find the scientist, but the tracker's broken. So, we just resolve to follow the trail of fire that Balthazar left behind. And the Druids appear to us, and they explain that they don't like that we're on this grotto. They don't like that anyone's intruding, but they especially don't like, it seems, that Balthazar is there. They call him the god being, and that's already really interesting, right? Because remember, the Druids were humans. And they were followers of Melandru more than any other god, perhaps, but as humans, they must have regarded Balthazar to some extent. But these Druids here, they seem to have no regard for him. They don't care for him at all, and they want him out. They want him out just as much as they want us out, even though potentially this could have been a god that they maybe once a long time ago worshipped. So where did that falling out come from? Does this perhaps suggest that there's some big battle going on between Melandru and Balthazar and the followers of each of these gods? And we'll see more of that certainly as the patch goes along. I'll remind you guys, back in GW1, here's a really weird bit of trivia a lot of you guys will have been forgetting, because it occurred way after Guild Wars 1's prime. But eventually, in Winter's Day, in GW1, Winter's Day was always classically between Grenth versus Dwayna, but they did later tack onto that. It wasn't just Grenth versus Dwayna, but they did a thing where it was also Melandru versus Balthazar. And in a weird way, in this patch, we're kind of seeing a little bit of that, aren't we? So the Druids say, look, we'll help you, but once we've helped you, you get this god away, we want you all gone. And so, you know, the enemy of our enemy is our friend, and so we team up, kind of. The Druids explain that Balthazar is at the apex of this volcano on the inside, at this weird crystalline structure thing. We need to race to get up there. This is actually a huge part of the patch, really, climbing up, listening to the different characters as we go, finding various hearts. It's at this point, really, that you'll be introduced to a couple of new factions in the area. And I'll have to do a lot more discussion on some of these later. But first of all, there are many mercenaries. So you'll recall from the previous video I did, or from the first instance, if you played it, that Balthazar had many mercenaries with him, members of the White Mantle particularly, before he cut ties with them, who helped to set up a base of operations here in this area of the world. A staging ground, if you will, for him to take the fight against Primordus, as we now know. And so now these mercenaries are still there, and a lot of them are feeling betrayed by Balthazar, who's just turned on them. Very similarly, and one of the characters even mentions this, that it's very similar to how Lazarus had been, you know, we know that this isn't Lazarus here anyway, but even Lazarus, as a Messart, had once upon a time betrayed the people who followed him, and now once again Lazarus, even as an imposter, has betrayed the people who are following him. And so there's all these mercenaries still around. So this is one of the factions that's here, but more interestingly perhaps than that, there are Inquest. And so you might wonder why that initial Asura had been grabbed by the Druids. Well, lots of Asura are being grabbed by Druids, members of the Pact. But the truth is that the Druids particularly hate Asura because there's been some Asura activity in this region of the world. Zin, the founder of Rata Novus in the Maguma jungle, after that was overrun by Chuck, was said to have came here. And now in, 100 years later, 150 years later, I think it is, we actually have Inquest poking around too, just seeing what they can find out. So there's a huge amount to talk about there with the Asura stuff, and I'm so excited we got more Zin story, a ton of new Zin story in this patch, but I'll keep it kind of shallow for now because there's a whole achievement and awesome audio logs and stuff, which we'll have to get to later, otherwise we will be here all day. Let's stick it to the main story for now because that's kind of side quest stuff. So, well, let's talk about what happens when we get to the top. Well, the Druids tell us that we were too slow. Even if you were really fast, even if you already had the mastery and you went as quickly as you could possibly conceive to, no, we were too slow, and Balthazar has moved on from the apex now, and he's moved into, like, the center of the volcano, and he's descended into it. He's descended into the lava, into the fire, into the heat, and the Druids lovingly tell us that this would melt our flesh off if we tried to follow. But there is something they can do, an ancient ritual, a ritual that really had no established precedent as far as I can tell in the lore, but the Druids can help us to resist this heat if we do them a favor. So there are 4 Druid spirits all around Draconis Mons, and they're trapped in Asuran vaults, which had been left over from Zin's attempts to build the city. And so what we need to do is go to each of these vaults, interact with the druid there who will have been warned of our coming, and each one will participate in a part of a ritual. Once we've got all 4, we can resist all of this fire. This area, if you guys recall, is a lot like what they did in the Bitterfrost Frontier patch, where we had to create that potion. You had to do the alchemy bit. It was kind of an excuse to do a tour of the entire map, right? You go here and you get a bit, and you go here and you get a bit, you go here. Same thing here. It's actually a very short story step if you know exactly where to go, but I think it's really awesome, and I like the format here. It means that you get to see the mercenaries, and you get to see perhaps some of the meta event stuff, these new minions, and you get to see the bloodstone infused fireworm fight and all stuff like that. So there is one slight complication though, and that's that because all of these druids are hidden in these old Asuran labs, you need to be able to gain access to those labs with something called a key gem. So this is, for any Guild Wars 1 player, probably one of the biggest parts of the patch in terms of old nostalgia. So we go to one of the places that Zin was trying to found his new city, and we find a ton of old golems. Now, the golems we find, if you look at these on screen, they're not quite like the Guild Wars 2 golems we've seen before. They're very old style. They're GW1 style. And so there's a heart vendor there called Z.O.X, right? I think is his name. And so what these are, is these are golems made by Zin. Just like some of the golems we saw in Guild Wars 1 when we did a quest chain to get a hero named M.O.X. And guess who is here? 157 years after the Zin's people were here, the golems remain, and M.O.X is among them.
Life form detected in vicinity. Activate greeting mode.
Are you? How long? Who are you?
Greetings, life form. For your convenience, I respond to the name M.O.X.
So we find out that these golems were programmed to nurture living things, and once all the living things were kind of gone, there was just like wildlife, and namely spiders. So these golems, without like any real direction, just started helping the spiders to thrive, and there's tons of spiders like inside and all around the golems. It's brilliant, very creepy. And now they're saying, oh, that you got to cull them down, and that's the idea of the heart quest. The heart dialogue's pretty cool as well. They say that they want help from flesh units, and that we are qualified to 96%. Now, when I first played this story, I was as an Asura, and so I thought that this heart dialogue said 96% in reference to the fact I was an Asura. And perhaps if I were a Sylvari, it wouldn't say 96% because, you know, it is something so plant-like, really fleshy, and maybe it would have a lower percentage, but unfortunately it's fixed, so maybe the devs missed a bit of a trick there. But the cool thing is we find M.O.X, and listen to this voice, guys.
I deduce that you have come here for a reason. Help me and golems, and golems will help you.
I need to find the nearest of Zin's vaults and get into it.
Oh, the dialogue is so cool. What you have to understand is M.O.X was a brilliant character. Shortly after Eye of the North came out, the devs did a little update, and Eye of the North was really the last big product for Guild Wars 1. The devs put in an update where you could get an extra dervish hero, and you got to, this was where you were first introduced to Zin. It was where you first got to find out about Zin's lab in the Falls, which is there in Heart of Thorns, by the way. It set up a mystery, which again, we'll have to talk about in a slightly different video. But M.O.X, as a part of just a quest that came after Eye of the North, he had dialogue and there was quest stuff going on, but it was never voice acted. We never got to hear what M.O.X sounded like, even though he was one of these characters that you could actually travel around with, a party member who would join you. And so this marks the first time we get to hear how he sounds, and it sounds so good. There's that perfect blend of kind of roboticness, but also that rocky, clunky mechanicalness to it. It's excellent. This was so brilliant to me. And so this is also, for what it's worth, a really big moment because of all the Guild Wars 1 players out there, many of us have been curious how many of those old characters would resurface in GW2. So there was this concept in GW1 of a hero, right? A party member who you could join and would run around anywhere. You could customize his skill bar, you could change their weapons and so forth. Now, of all the heroes there were in that game, and there were a lot, most of them were mortals and humans or Char and Norn and things that will have died by the time Guild Wars 2 comes around, because 250 years is a long time. But of all of them, there were 3 who potentially could have survived till Guild Wars 2's days. You have Ogden Stonehealer, who did resurface in Guild Wars 2 in 2012 with a personal story, and might even have stuff to do in the next expansion and so forth, especially if we end up in the region of Thunderhead. So you got Ogden Stonehealer, who stayed alive, and we got to see again. You had M.O.X, who we all knew potentially could still be alive and out there, and as of this patch has re-entered the story, which is awesome too. And now there's just one more character, one more hero who potentially we could meet, and that's Raza, who is essentially a demonic construct from the mists that we meet at the end of Nightfall. And so now Raza is the 3rd one that maybe we will see at some point. So anyway, M.O.X was brilliant to see come back. I guess I'm done geeking out about that. I think some people, when the patch came out, were very unfairly criticizing this part of the story, saying that, you know, this was another problem with exposition and that they felt left out because they didn't even know he was a Guild Wars 1 character. To me, that doesn't really matter, though, right? Like, those of us who knew he was a GW1 character get that extra level of enjoyment out of this patch, but you don't need to know he's from GW1 to understand his role in this story here. He's just a character you speak to as a function of a part of a quest, and that's it, really. The other very cool part, though, I will say, is once you've done this story, M.O.X even goes to your home instance, where he becomes a jukebox to play different music for you. It's really, really, really awesome. So you hear that we need a key to get into these vaults to free the druids. This key reminds me a lot of the lab crystal you need to get into Ula's lab back in Metrica province, because don't forget, Zin and Ula are very similar characters, and you kind of can't talk about one without talking about the other. So I don't know whether that was a deliberate callback, but I thought that was very interesting. Essentially, you have to kill a spider in the area that swallowed the key. Once you've got the key, you can travel around to find all of these labs. So, let's talk about them. Lab 1 is the Ancient Hollow. You'll notice when you come to this that there are actual doors that open and close. This, again, is just another bump up in the storytelling. It's like we've seen a lot of time in Season 3 now already, where, for example, you had the Sons of Svarnir camp that you couldn't enter unless you were wearing the disguise. Or in the Fire Island chain last time, we had that Skrit camp that you couldn't enter unless the Skrit liked you. Well, here you get these doors that open and close and you can climb in and out. I love these extra ways of interacting with the environment. I'm really excited to see how much more they can push this in big, large-scale expansion maps coming up. But so, we get to go into the Ancient Hollow. This is all poisoned and mushroomy and overgrown and spiderful, but we get to the end and we interact with the Druid, who is very appreciative.
When you whispered your intention to me, I grant a portion of the protection we need to enter the volcano's throat.
Thank you. I won't waste your gift.
At this point, Taimi messages us, and she points out our temperature's fluctuating.
Commander, I'm getting an odd reading from the communicator. Your temperature seems to be fluctuating wildly.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense. I was given a heat barrier from one of the spirits of the wild down here.
Sure, yeah. Perfect sense. But seriously, what's happening?
I told you, these voices spoke to me.
Uh-huh.
Then the ghost tree things told me I should free them.
Uh-huh.
And in return, they grant me protection from the high temperatures.
Sure. So, you're clearly suffering from heat stroke. But don't panic. I'll send help your way.
Taimi, I'm fine. Or will be. As soon as I liberate more of my magical ghost friends.
Oh boy.
And it's funny, right? Come on! Season 3 is funny. I don't think you can say it's not funny. And the fact that the game can be funny is a definite sign that they've improved a lot in their delivery of the story. This made me laugh, and a lot of our little chit-chats, for whether you like Taimi or not, I think she serves a very, very important role here, and that there's a lot of nice, happy flavor just because she's chatting to you like this. And of course, you can be exploring the map as she does it, which is also really, really great, instead of forcing you into cutscenes. So, the next lab is at the top of the cavern. It's super high on a ridge that you have to run along on the right. Filled with cages where animal testing presumably was going on. Filled with tigers and bats and polar bears. Totally giving me Lost vibes. Actually reminds me of some original gen Tomb Raider 1 stuff as well. I don't know, it's these big, very, sheer cages. I like this area. Anyway, it's probably my favorite of all the different little labs you go to. We're going to free a druid here, and Taimi will chip in again and actually give us a very important conversation now. We're basically going to talk to Taimi at this point about this rock and hard place that we're currently in. The fact that, we're trying to kill the Elder Dragons, but killing the Elder Dragons is going to cause chaos. And this is actually a really big moment. So let's back up one step. Taimi as a character, where ever since we first met her, she was a character that was idolizing Scarlet. She's a very young character. She's a character that, to me, would be most interesting as a character who makes a big mistake. It seemed like she was on a trajectory to really screw us over, right? And I thought that the way Season 3 was going to go was that Taimi would have us stage this big fight between Prime Orders and Jormag, which we've been familiar with over 2 patches now. And in doing so, she would cause one of the Elder Dragons to die, but the other one perhaps to become supercharged, or the balance of magic on Tyria to go completely out of control. And because of this plan Taimi was developing, it would end up really backfiring on us, and this would be the jeopardy going forwards. And that would be a really great thing for Taimi as a character, because it would show she's fallible. People don't like the idea that Taimi is too smart, she accomplishes too much, she's just a little girl, and it's kind of frustrating to see that. So to have her knocked down a peg by making this big mistake would be a really, really decent thing to do in the story, I think. And I thought that that's exactly what ArenaNet were gearing up to. Taimi's idea to have the 2 Elder Dragons fight was going to backfire. And I was going to be eating my popcorn to watch it happen right for the next expansion to come out, right? That's where I thought we were. So then this conversation happens.
Come in, Commander. Hey, don't touch that!
Go ahead, Taimi.
Flunt and his nosy little puppets are picking this place clean. Okay, not sure how to even start this. Look, we've discovered that eliminating dragons isn't the best thing for the environment. But what else were we gonna do? Keep them alive and just let them eat us? So we destroy them and deal with the fallout, but what if we can't deal with the consequences anymore?
What's worse than being consumed by a dragon?
Well, when Balthazar stole the machine, it got me thinking. So I ran a scenario in the simulation room. I should have done this before. This is all my fault. I was so exhausted. Keeping the lab secret, working all hours. I didn't... all the lives. I've doomed everyone. Probably? I don't know.
What are you getting at? What's going on? Taimi?
I'm here. There's a communicator dock near the submarine you arrived on. Plug into that and you'll see.
And I have to say, I'm kind of really frustrated with this. Because what essentially happened here, guys, is Taimi isn't making a mistake. Taimi has incredibly figured out her mistake before she makes it. She says she's got some simulations, all that stuff about her idolizing Scarlet and the trajectory she seemed to be on. None of that really matters in the end. No, Taimi really is that amazing, and she's foreseen the mistake early, and we're not going to make it. And so this was a really big thing I didn't see coming, because I thought the story was so clearly going to be a good story if it went in a certain direction, and all of a sudden Taimi has foreseen the issue before it's too late. And so this kind of really took the wheels off from me. I didn't know where we were going at this point with the story, and for any of season 3 going forward now, because though the conversation itself may not seem like that important, this represents a big sudden shift. And so, you know, I wanted to run with it, but we get something very cool as well going on here. We actually get 2 different objectives at once, or even more, right? And I think this is really fantastic. This is another example of where Living World Season 3 is telling the story and giving us experiences as players in a far better way than the personal story ever did, or that Season 1 or Season 2 ever did. If you look, guys, at what we've got going on, we got a choice. Do you want to go to another lab, or do you want to go run her simulation? It's not just, you know, objective, followed by objective, followed by objective. They had the balls to blow it open a little bit and give us, you know, a bit of decision. I really liked this. I really enjoyed that. So the way that I decided to play here for you guys is we'll go and check out Taimi's simulation and plug ourselves into the machine last of all. Let's free the druids first. So next we head to the Inquest camp. I must be honest, every time I've played this patch, I've just skipped to the end of this vault by just gliding from the top and landing down there. I don't really know what else there is to do in there. It looks like there's lots of electricity and obstacles you've got to avoid there, but you get to free this druid, so that's 3 or 4. And then lastly, there's a very cool one on the edge of the boiling sea. So I'm tempted to say near the Lagos body, but not exactly. We have to really, you know, fly under the regular areas of the map that we're traveling around on and hook right down. So this final vault here is quite a joy to explore and to get to. This is, you know, really a great sign. Just look at this footage of what exploring Draconis Mons is like and how the new mastery works. It's fantastic, guys. If you've still not played it, this is probably the best map that they've done. But so we head on in, very fiery stuff, and voila, that is our protection complete. We can now pursue Balthazar. But let's take a second to check out Taimi's projection from her hollow projector to see what will happen if we pit these 2 Elder Dragons against one another as we thought we were going to.
The simulation is beginning.
We see a vision that's very similar to Living World Season 2, where we got to go into Omad's machine and we saw all the orbs moving around. And I'll remind you guys, that cutscene back in Season 2 was like the highlight of the whole thing. That was awesome. Do you remember how much speculation we got out of that? How much the community was galvanized to get into this, you know, frantic lore discussion? It was brilliant. And we're kind of getting the same thing here, but somehow it feels like it's not even the best part of the patch, let alone the entire season. So we see what we expect, right? If these 2 orbs are destroyed somehow, you see everything fall into chaos and everything collapses, and it's just a bit mental. So I wonder how much people who weren't paying attention in Season 2 to that previous orb cutscene really resonate with this here. But I enjoyed seeing the orbs again. It just didn't flare up to me as much as I thought it might, ultimately. But yeah, so Taimi's realized the mistake. This representation from the holo projector confirms as much. We shouldn't destroy these 2 Elder Dragons in one. Taimi has created a machine that can do it, but maybe we shouldn't activate it. Complication, though, Balthazar's trying to activate it. So we resolve to just try and stop Balthazar for now, and later we will we'll see what we can do. The big catch, though, is that if Balthazar activates this machine and we try to stop it halfway through, it's gonna blow up, it will break, and we will never be able to replace it. So this patch has had a lot of criticism from people that Taimi's too good. How could she make a machine that will destroy 2 Elder Dragons at once when no one else has managed to do this? Yes, she's working off of OMAD, and yes, she's working off of Ratanovas and stuff, but this is too good, this machine. This is too powerful and too left field. Well, I'm actually personally not that offended by it. I don't think it's that crazy because at the end of the day, this machine in the patch doesn't work. We are forced to stop it halfway through, and it does break. So maybe it's not that difficult of a pill to swallow. But at this point in the story, that's where we stand. Moving into the last instance now. Another half an hour of description for you guys there. We have to stop Balthazar before he gets to this machine, before he turns it on. And all that's left is to take our Druid protection and enter through the top of the volcano. And the last instance is really, truly quite crazy in terms of the story, in terms of the mechanics, in terms of the environment. A whole load of stuff is about to happen. That'll be the third and final video on just recapping what the lore even is of this patch, and then we'll get into all the amazing speculation just after. But until then, guys, thanks very much for watching. Let me know what you thought of Draconis Mons. Is there something that happened in this part of the story I didn't mention? I'd love to hear about it in the comments below. The discussion we've been having ever since this patch came out has been, frankly, amazing. Hope you guys have been enjoying, and I will see you next time. Have a good one, guys.